Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network. It's the New York Times headline, Noel. Sweeping raids, giant camps, and mass deportations inside Trump's 2025 immigration plans. If anything, they're not just shouting it, saying it out loud, but it's through a megaphone this time, and it's written down.
Absolutely. It's a plan that's actually been a long time in the works, right? Because this isn't just Trump running off at the mouth with his crazy things. This is the Federalist Society writing Project 2025 and these DOJ overhauls. And, he's saying it and he's getting applauded for it. At the same time, he's under criminal indictment in 5 separate cases. The fact that we're even having this conversation is mind-boggling.
This would be rejected as a reality show, wouldn't it? In Hollywood, you'd be like, "Oh, that's ridiculous." I mean, yeah. Fred Wellman said this is precisely what's happening. They literally published Project 2025, and barely anyone is covering it and how insane it is. The public doesn't understand the risks of a Trump victory. That is the media's fault. You've been out there forever. I was saying last hour, I don't know why, things you say stick in my head sometimes for weeks. And you talking about that conference room on The Apprentice, that it didn't exist. That, it's this crappy little family business with a smattering of employees with tacky carpets. You're like, that whole thing didn't exist. Mark Burnett, I mean, God, when history is written about how we got to fascism in America, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was fascism was a reality show that was manipulated, to make something that, like I said, that Trump was a licensing operation. That office was tiny. There was papers stacked everywhere, threadbare furniture. It wasn't this glamorous billionaire landing in a helicopter with his savant children next to him and their brilliant business acumen. That's what we're seeing in this trial. It was an illusion, but it was an illusion that had a lot of appeal to a certain demographic in this country and a certain sort of malignancy in the psyche of many people. And that's what he's now exploiting. That's what's now being institutionalized, as you say. They're putting it in writing because they've already proven it has a mass appeal to some extent.
Well, Nolan, you the one. I mean, this New York fraud trial happening this week is something you could have seen coming a million years ago. A lot of people lived in New York, but it really is. And I think you keep saying that. That's why it's so close to the bone for him, because it blows up this whole fraud created not just by him for all these years, but then The Apprentice. That he's some above board successful businessman, right?
Absolutely, because he loves that image. He cultivated it back in the early 80s. That's the first John Barron call, was him putting on a fake voice, calling up Forbes, saying, I should be on the billionaires list. He was worth $5 million at the time, but he tried to convince them to include his father's wealth, in his chart. And his father ended up suing him on his deathbed, and Trump got the money anyway and blew it. And that's all before The Apprentice, right? So before The Apprentice, the guy was a complete failure. The Apprentice was this illusion, and Trump was able to take that illusion and become president of the United States. That's why he's showing up in New York, because that's more important to him than losing a trial in Atlanta or something, because he knows his followers won't really care about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, how about this latest thing? Him saying, yes, I want the whole world to see this. I want the trial televised. What do you make of that? Because of course he wants everything to be a TV show, right?
Yeah, because in his mind, there's no such thing as bad press, and that's the reality of the situation, right? We have all the facts we already need on Donald Trump, and he's still where he is in terms of spitting distance of the presidency again. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. I mean, but that's what we're saying is I hope it is televised, because I think, the problem is he just creates, as his own reality, that he just thinks if he can lie and lie and lie like he's doing, right, on the steps outside this fraud trial, that, his core, they believe anything he says, right, and nothing else.
Absolutely, because he leans into the belligerence and the bellicosity. Right. He does the same thing to the judge that he gripes about in front of his crowds, and people respond to that. He's running on anger and resentment. That's the whole "I am your retribution" rap.
Yeah.
Right? It's blaming someone else. So to his followers, the DOJ and the Justice Department represents liberal woke people that are standing in the way of the dominant white Christian male. So I don't think he suffers by having it televised. And I agree with you. It would be some good television, because you'll see him freak out like we've been seeing in New York.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I was going to say his spokesman doubled down on the Hitlery comments. He said those who try to make that ridiculous assertion, the comparison to him, are clearly snowflakes grasping for anything because they're suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, and their entire existence will be crushed when President Trump returns to the White House. So that's kind of confirming.
Right, exactly.
Yes, you will be exterminated like vermin when, yes.
Right, existence will be crushed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's coming from the bedbug king, right? Doral, Trump, he knows about vermin, so take him seriously.
So, Noel, what is your take on the trial thus far? I know one legal expert called Ivanka's testimony low-key snitching because, of course she had a lot of I don't recalls, but, legally, even she knows that wasn't relevant. They used her to get these documents into evidence, and she didn't dispute any of them. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
She was Ivanka. She's very wily. She's much more disciplined, as is Jared, than their father and father-in-law. So I think it was almost like she was successful, right? She didn't have any major dust-ups. She didn't really lose it. They got the prosecution got that evidence into the trial, but she's not. I don't think she has the same stakes as her father and brothers, and I think she knows that and is sort of threading that needle to some extent.
Yeah. So I don't know. What do you think Trump's saying he wants to call 127 witnesses. I don't. First of all, he's already lost, and as many legal experts say, documents don't lie.
Right.
I mean, they've already. So I don't know what I guess his own little reality show this week, right?
Yeah, and just stringing it out, just making a spectacle of the judicial system. Trump was involved with 4,000 lawsuits before he became president. There's a whole book documenting it. James Zirin, I believe, is the writer. 4,000 times he basically used the courts against his opponents because he had deep enough pockets to tie up their time. Yeah. And I think he's doing the same thing on a public level to just exploit the PR aspects of it. And it works, right? Because they talk about him every night on every news channel. There's 5 hours of.
Dana, I'm sure you won't find it as a surprise that Trump runs his club like it's his kingdom. He's the king, and he is very unhappy whenever prosecutors, investigators encroach on that territory. The two things that came out in this was, the one was that he went ballistic when he found out that the maid who cleans his bedroom suite, so the person cleaning both his and Melania Trump's private quarters, when that person was approached by investigators, and that person, she is a possible witness here, according to our reporting and our sources.
Yeah, apparently not everyone he's treated like his entire life wants to go to prison for him, as it turns out, Noel, right?
Exactly. And I can see why he would be wary of somebody who had access to his intimate spaces, shall we say.
Yeah.
By the way, Andrew Weinstein said, this Judge Cannon, this is the only thing that kills me is, he said, this doesn't change my opinion because she said for now not to delay the classified documents trial, but he said this doesn't change my opinion of Cannon one iota. By allowing Trump to later move to delay the trial, but keeping the date for now, she's blocking Fani Willis from scheduling her trial on the current Florida date, and Cannon has substantially delayed the dates for all Florida filings. I mean, the fact that some hack Trump appointee judge is basically acting as his defense attorney, along with Elise Stefanik, who just filed a complaint against the judge in the New York fraud trial on Trump's behalf. It is the whole party that has become lawless, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's what I was referring to earlier when I mentioned the 4,000 cases that Trump was involved in before he was president, right? He knows how to weaponize the judiciary system. He learned it from Roy Cohn, okay? And you can bet there's a network of MAGA supporters, in the legal community advising, these people, Judge Cannons and whatever, whether, she'll admit to it or not. I think Andrew is correct. That's a strategy. She's going to push it out, then at the last minute delay it further, and you will have wasted all that time on the docket, on the calendar. And he knows this. You know, it's a foot race. He just wants to get elected so he can shut it all down.
What are you expecting this week? We have about a minute left just in terms of Trump's, I don't know what he's going to do this week. His defense, I guess, in the trial where he's already lost in New York.
He'll kick up some more dust like he does. He'll try to command the headlines. Hopefully the media will double down on what we learned over the weekend about his plans if he takes office, because that's something we should not be talking about in this country, especially at a time of rising anti-Semitism, both here, abroad, and what we're dealing with geopolitically. You know, the talk has to be sobering and serious because this is a real threat.
Yeah, obviously.